Hello, good evening, and welcome back. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there, and I hope you've remembered in time in order to send the gifts and the words and the thoughts that you wish to share with your mothers as well, the ones that have raised you, or at least hopefully had some sort of positive impact upon you in order to make you the person that you are, and somebody that you can call upon at any point throughout your adult life if they are still around and still with you, in order to help guide you and provide that moral support, which we all know is vitally important in your times of need, and also sometimes just to give you some reassurance to know that you're doing the right thing, and it's very, very secure in order to know that you have somebody there who will help you, who has your best interest at heart and doesn't have any hidden agenda in you doing whatever it is that you want to do, and doesn't want you to do something that isn't helpful for you. Unless you're too red-pilled and think that they've just got the female agenda at heart and want you to please another woman, then all being well, you're grateful for them and they do actually have your best interest at heart, and you can send your gratitude to them. And obviously the greatest gift that you can give somebody is your time. And that's why, although there were plenty of lovely Mother's Day gifts of chocolates, of flowers, of teddy bears, and even just cards with pre-printed messages, it always means more when it comes from the heart and it comes from yourself and whatever it is that you wish to transcribe within the letter sent to your mother, in order to show her that you do appreciate her, and you can consolidate all of the positive thoughts that you've had for her over the year into just one little A5 page inside a 50p card or £1 card, whatever you can find, because the card itself doesn't really mean anything, but it's what's inside that counts. the beauty's on the inside, if you will, and therefore it is what you write with your own hand, not typed up or emailed, but actually sent by hand, that will mean the most. It will have that emotion and intent through your own handwriting, which will be appreciated when read. Even if it only takes a couple of minutes, that message will last so much longer than the amount of time it took you to think of it, write it, and for it to be read. That will last a lot longer. So, with that in mind, coronavirus. Boris Johnson in Mother's Day warning amid concern for NHS. Amid millions of roses and tulips and flowers being destroyed because nobody wanted to buy them because they weren't going to be at their mothers. Amid cancellations because pubs and cafes have closed after tonight, Saturday night, due to concerns of social distancing. So well done for being Saturday night being the last night. At least there's some sort of forward planning there. Well done. So Boris Johnson has warned the NHS could be overwhelmed if people do not act to slow the accelerating spread of coronavirus, as he urged people not to visit loved ones on Mother's Day, which is of course because the older people are worst affected. And the other nice thing about it being a socialised health service, or nationalised health service if you will, is that of course we've had to close the borders, and that is lovely. That sure, you could have socialism and maybe it'll work, you could have a national health service and maybe it'll work, but you can't have open borders at the same time. You've got to be able to keep it afloat from an economical standpoint. It's a very pragmatic standpoint, and it might be emotionless and cold-hearted, but nonetheless it is a necessity. And thankfully this national emergency has proven that there is a great strain on our national services, and therefore we need to shut the borders in order to know who's coming in and what trouble they might be causing, in order to keep tabs on the people who wish to join this great nation of ours. And therefore it could be a blessing in disguise, if you don't believe that it's globalist propaganda, in order to enable us to close our borders, keep checks on who's coming in, considering almost every nation around the world has done it. Even Germany, believe it or not, and they've got drones patrolling their borders in order to see who is coming in, that we can see, well, hey, closed borders are actually going to help us. And we understand that the NHS is at a strain, and therefore we can't allow just anybody in doing whatever they might want to do. It almost seems as if open borders is a shit idea, especially when you've got a national health service. So, well done, Boris, for actually enacting a closed border policy. It was about fucking time, wasn't it? So, well done. So it says the number of people who have died in the UK with coronavirus rose to 233 on Saturday as cases topped 5,000. Yeah, that's not too bad then, really, is it? It's reasonable containment out of dozens of millions of people in the UK. 5,000 cases, not too bad. As long as we can contain the spread to be quite slow, so only a couple of percent at any one time are affected, if that, preferably less than a percent any one time are affected, then we're not going to really have a significant problem. It's mainly going to be that the problems are caused by the panic and the scare than the virus itself, so we'll be fine. And hey, it should encourage stronger communities, as I keep saying. It comes as NHS England plans to go out to 1.5 million people most at risk. Those at-risk people will receive letters or text messages strongly advising them not to go out for 12 weeks to protect themselves, the government said. Yes, 4 months. That is why we think that it's going to last about 18 months, on and off. It's going to come in peaks and valleys, essentially. Just like people taking antibiotics, essentially. They think, oh, it's bad now. It's like, yeah, we must do something about it. Oh, it's pretty much gone. Let's not worry about it. And stop taking the antibiotics. Oh, it's back. Oh, shit. Now we need to do something else about it. And when it comes to antibiotics and thinking that you don't need to see out the fullness of your course, that is what causes things like methicillin resistance, streptococcus, MRSA, if you're the superbug. And basically the same goes for coronavirus, especially given that the longer you leave it, as in taking 18 months, the higher the chance it has of it mutating, in which case your only hope is that it's going to be less lethal because it wants to survive. In which case it might mutate more often in order to become a seasonal thing, so we don't have to worry about it. It's like a rhinovirus, unless we wipe it out like we did with SARS, which was also a coronavirus, which is why we call this one the novel coronavirus, or the Wuhan coronavirus, to distinguish it from the other coronavirus, which also came from China. But they don't like to talk about that, because they call that one SARS, the severe acute respiratory syndrome. So yeah, let's stick with that. Yes. So the at-risk people include people who have received organ transplants, are living with severe respiratory conditions such as cystic fibrosis, or specific cancers such as blood or bone marrow. In a message to the country on Saturday evening, Johnson said, "The numbers are very stark and they are accelerating. The Italians have a superb healthcare system, and yet the doctors and nurses have been completely overwhelmed by the demand," he said. Well, yes, their leading virologist said that it was basically just due to them not wanting to be racist, or wanting to not be racist, in that they weren't actually willing to admit the problem that they had early on. You could say that it was because they weren't authoritarian or totalitarian enough in order to enact closed borders and quarantine people as soon as necessary, or that it's just that they're too liberal in not wanting to be racist and saying, oh yes, you should hug a Chinese person in order to not be racist, as that Italians did for whatever bloody reason, and that they have enacted the Chinese sweatshop mentality into Italy, so that when you see things that are made in Italy, it's like, yes, technically they were made inside the confines of the Italian borders, but they were still made with the Chinese mentality and Chinese work labour. So made in Italy, not made by Italians. Slight difference there. So you get cheap Chinese shit, but sold for the made in Italy price. Perfect. So moving on. They're saying an unprecedented health emergency has led to an unprecedented challenge for government. Over the last few days, we've seen decisions made that would have been scarcely seen possible just a fortnight ago. There's another one today. 1.5 million people in England alone will be told not to leave their homes to protect themselves from the virus. The concern in government is set out by the Prime Minister. His warning that the UK could be just a fortnight behind Italy, and that the NHS could be overwhelmed, is one of the starkest we've heard yet. It's designed to be so, to persuade us all to follow advice to stay home and help save lives. It seems people are still going out, and it seems to be just a regular night, which is why they've got the police and even the army out in order to enforce closures of businesses such as pubs and bars, so the people cannot socialise as they wish to, which is why people have now got a huge stock up on alcohol, which I think is brilliant to show just how much of a requirement we have on alcohol and how dissatisfied we are as a whole with our lives, that we wish to get pissed so regularly in order to avoid the monotony and pain of everyday life, which means we're doing things that aren't meaningful for us and wish to check out of reality through drugs of alcohol and nicotine as well. Why aren't people stocking up on that as well? Oh, they are. That I think it shows a much greater problem, and hopefully by creating that stronger community bond, we can inhibit that progress as well, and hopefully get people to rescind on their addictions, even if they don't view it as such. But more than that, seeing as the private sector, in an NHS-run country has still done well, they decided to take a hold of them as well. Socialism strikes again. As it says that in the last 48 hours, thousands of retired medics have answered the government's call to return to work at the outbreak, including 4,000 nurses and 500 doctors. Earlier, the NHS announced that it struck a deal with private hospitals to get hold of thousands of extra beds, ventilators and medical staff. The agreement will see the private sector reallocate almost its entire national hospital capacity to the NHS. Under the terms of the deal, the private sector will be reimbursed at cost, meaning no profit will be made for doing so. So at least there's something, as long as it's kept up with the rate of inflation. But hey, well done, private sector, for despite the NHS, which is supposed to be the catch-all for everybody, you've actually got enough of the NHS to actually take notice of you, which suggests again that the NHS doesn't work. And hey, it doesn't matter if you're private or not, seeing as the NHS is going to take control of your property when necessary anyway, as socialism strikes again. But hey, for everybody else, I hope you enjoy Mother's Day, as we're going into it now, this early Sunday morning, and you make the most of the time with your mothers, whether it's in person or from a distance, and enjoy this Sunday, as we seem to be on the cusp of an even worse pandemic that we're going into. And hey, now's the time to really stock up if you can, make plans in order to work from home, and make the most of this emergency and spend time with the ones you love, because hey, it's times like this that make you realize the mortality of human beings and whether or not you'll have that time with them. So make the most of it, and until next time, have a good one.